Harvard has been a disaster. I'd rather see that money go to trade schools. And by the way, they're totally anti-Semitic at Harvard.
On May 22nd, the Trump administration stripped Harvard of federal government certification. Without this certification, no U.S. institute, including Harvard, can enroll non-U.S. students. The oldest university in the U.S. filed a lawsuit the very next day, following which a federal judge temporarily blocked the administration's effort. President Donald Trump's take is that Harvard University is withholding information on international students from the government. For now, the mounting battle between Trump and Harvard is on hold. On May 28th, the Department of Homeland Security gave Harvard University 30 days to prove it meets the requirements of the Student and Exchange Visitor Program. Soon, at Harvard's latest graduation ceremony, its president, Alan Garber, reinforced its identity as an institution welcoming students from all around the world.
Members of the class of 2025 from down the street, across the country, and around the world. Around the world, just as it should be.
But this is only a temporary relief for Harvard, which has thousands of international students. They account for close to 1/3 of the total Harvard student population, of which about 800 are Indians. This is a time when many Indian students, along with their parents, are drawing out higher education plans. For some, Harvard was the number one choice. But now they're looking at other options as well. It is 3rd of June. I'm Prachi Verma, your host, and you're listening to The Morning Brief. I asked Naveen Chopra, founder of TC Global, a 30-year-old study abroad platform, some questions on the same. Naveen, the current standoff between Trump and Harvard is just getting worse. Trump is considering redirecting Harvard's federal grant money to trade schools. So what is the impact going to be on Indian students, especially those who are looking at the US for higher education?
Look, there is already a certain amount of uncertainty and fear which has gripped a large number of students and parents. But on the other hand, the desire for that level of and quality of education is so high that students are still going. I mean, right now, Trump is saying one thing on this side, and on the other side, there are, visa interviews are being granted freely. There was a time when visa spots were hard to come by and wait lists were months long. Right now, students are getting spots almost as soon as they ask for them. So the outward traffic into the US is still looking quite healthy.
So you're saying there is no impact of the Harvard and Trump episode?
No, I'm not saying there is no impact. But what I'm suggesting is that there is an impact, but that impact is not as heavy as one would have imagined. I mean, there are a few people who have pulled back from the US and are looking at other destinations or going to other destinations. But it's not that the fear psychosis is such that people have stopped applying to or going to US. I think that most people are understanding that this is a passing phase, a temporary phase. They have all seen President Trump announce something or the other, a policy, and then do a U-turn a few hours, a few days, a few weeks later. It's just a very unpredictable and somewhat unstable situation.
Right. Is there any impact of this on other institutes in the US? Harvard is one of the most prominent institutes in the world. So considering this has happened to Harvard, what are the reactions of the other institutes in the US?
There's definitely very, very major concern. Any of the universities that we're talking to are expressing a great deal of concern. All of them are looking at what they can do to push back or mitigate these circumstances. most of them require the international student traffic, and probably the largest numbers are from India or China, but they are largely lying low, not making a great deal of noise or drawing attention to themselves. And all of them are saying that we just have to weather the storm till it blows away.
Naveen, how long do you think this storm will take to pass?
Well, is it's anybody's guess. In actual fact, because of this propensity of President Trump to do U-turns, it can happen anytime. The longest process that one can think of under the current set of laws in the United States, that a president can't have more than 2 terms, another 3.5 years. But I suspect the fundamentals that I've outlined, that the talent shortage, which is a reality, they are not going to get enough local talent. Then the huge need for universities to keep themselves funded. So unless the federal government says that they are going to throw trillions of dollars or hundreds of billions of dollars at them to cover the shortfall for funding from schools, that need is going to remain. So those are 2 fundamental facts. And at some stage, industry is going to start screaming, if not publicly, in private, to the president and his troops that, look, I mean, we don't have the talent. We can't, you're saying bring jobs back to United States. How do you expect us to bring jobs to United States, or rather to bring industry to United States, when there are no people available to work?
Answering many of your questions on studying in the US is Deepak Ahluwalia, an immigration lawyer based out of the US. So, Deepak, as you've been an immigration lawyer for the last 10 years, how exactly are you seeing this tussle between Trump and Harvard? What is your point of view?
In my last 10 years, I don't think it's been as stressful of a time for immigrants, for immigration lawyers, for anyone who is in this immigration world in the United States. As stressful as it has been in the last 3-4 months since the current administration has come into power. And what we are seeing with Harvard and the Trump administration, the showdown between them, was just a moment waiting to happen. And it shouldn't really be surprising given what we've been seeing with this current administration for the last several months, as I indicated before. In my opinion, I think Harvard has a clear pathway to victory. And if we know anything about Trump or the Trump administration, especially the second time around, they are trying very heavy-handed negotiation tactics, even though, to be very honest, it's fallen flat on their face multiple times. And so because other colleges were bending to Trump administration's will, Harvard obviously not doing so. And what I'm talking about, just to step back a little bit, this whole cancellation of the CEVP program, which, the full form is Student Exchange Visitor Program, which every college is required to have in order to actually admit international students here in the United States. Harvard was one of the few schools who stood up and said that they were not going to provide the Trump administration for the additional items that they asked for. So in turn, what Harvard did was they revoked the certification, and they basically said they're doing this because Harvard failed to provide information about international students allegedly involved in activities that were deemed anti-American or linked to foreign entities. But again, that was all fluff. All they wanted to do was punish them, so to speak, for not basically falling in line with them, even after withholding federal funding or federal grants that these colleges were eligible for. So this was just a tit for tat. You're not going to listen to us. Now we're going to try to hurt you.
Do you see Trump coming even harder on Harvard? Because, the way we've seen in the past few days, what else can happen?
Prachi, that's a great question. I was thinking about this as all of this is unfolding before us. I mean, we're talking about literally just the last few days as all of this is occurring. One of the things that I actually do see happening, which no one has actually talked about or written about yet, is that even if there's an injunction in place, you have an administration that is very aggressive on international students or anyone here really coming on a non-immigrant visa. And so if someone does get that visa and someone is incoming, let's just talk about Harvard specifically right now. If someone is coming right now or in the next few months for fall admission, and they're expecting to start at Harvard, and they've not only worked day and night, put, sweat equity into the ability to even get accepted into a school like Harvard. And so if they're entering the United States, nothing actually stops the CBP or any other officers within the port of entries to scrutinize these visas a little more. So what I mean by that, let me clarify. The visa is there, right? So the judge has told the Trump administration, you may not do a blanket revocation to Harvard where they suffer irreparable harm where the students are not able to come. So they say, okay, fine, we're going to let them come. But that does not mean that they can't individually scrutinize them. So for example, we have seen cases here in the United States already where student left, went back to their country, came back in, was flying into the United States, and then they pulled up social media posts where they were saying pro-Palestine, or they were making pro-Palestine posts, or sharing stories that were critical of Israel or the Trump administration. That was grounds for revocation of a student visa. So I can see the Trump administration going to an individual harm in the sense that they're just going to start scrutinizing these individually versus just doing a blanket denial.
Deepak, who do you think will blink first? Will it be Trump or the Harvard University?
When they filed this lawsuit against the Trump administration, they made very basic legal arguments. So they argued that what Trump is doing was a First Amendment violation, right? It was basically they were asserting that the administration's actions were infringing upon its right to free speech and academic freedom. There were due process concerns made in terms of how can you just out of the blue pull out the rug under them and revoke the SEVP certification, right? There was no proper procedural safeguards. There was no advance notice. There was no tangible items that they were told that they were doing, which was putting the certification at risk. And then, of course, which is what we all knew is really happening, is they made the argument of this was retaliatory, right? They said this was retaliation for non-compliance of a previous ask. The previous ask and what they did really have no overlap, but they made a very thin, like a very thin argument, or I should say a thin connection of, well, we're revoking this because, we believe that they haven't been giving us information that could further American interests, but actually be useful for us in terms of national security. All of that is, again, those are very far-flung arguments. And so in terms of the Trump administration blinking first, I think they're going to go all the way to the end and they're going to realize they're going to lose this lawsuit.
The fact that the Trump administration is slamming the foreign student intake, and I was reading something where Trump has mentioned 31% are international students, so it's like in a way, disgrace. How does the legal community see all this, where on one hand, if for any corporate, diversity is something everybody, wears like a badge of honor. And now are companies and institutes kind of shying away by talking about the whole DEI, diversity, inclusion? Is there something you're seeing like this?
Oh, obviously. I mean, the shift has been paramount. You have behemoth companies here who have literally gone the other way. They have swung the pendulum the other way just because this administration has made it known that they will not entertain any of that during the next 4 years. And so for all of these companies to or I should say most of these companies to fall in line is missing the critical point when we are trying to make this connection to international students. It's already difficult as it is for an international student to come here, especially from India, because you're asking them to come to American colleges, you're recruiting them internationally, and when they finally get accepted, you're taking double or triple the tuition money. Then when they're about to graduate, you're actually telling them they cannot permanently live here unless they go through a H-1B route, which, as you know, is a whole lottery system. It's a Wild West over there. So, out of the initial 65,000 that's allotted, we always get more than 500,000 applications. And if you don't get selected, you have to actually return back to India. That does not make sense. So all this is doing, to be very honest, is this is turning people away. Let's get it right. We rely on international students. It's not the other way around. International students don't only have the option of coming to America. They would like to come to America. They would like to pursue the American dream. But if they constantly are seeing that the odds are being stacked against them and they're constantly being blamed for, the administration and previous administration's mistakes on correcting immigration or making immigration reform, they're going to look elsewhere. And you'll see the next 4 years, you'll see more people applying to prestigious universities and colleges in Europe or they'll go up north to Canada. And once America sees that, they will realize that they've made a mistake.
So, Deepak, in nutshell, who do you think is going to be the biggest loser in this entire episode of Trump versus Howard or Trump versus any other US institute which does not comply with what the Trump administration says?
There will be two losers here. It will be the Trump administration in terms of short term, and long term, it's going to be the American economy, because it doesn't only stop at the students. There's other things going on here right now. For example, they're trying to attempt to end birthright citizenship, which is, separately being argued before the courts. A lot of the international students or even individuals here on H-1B are they have US born children. And so if you're taking that away from them, you already have someone here on an H-1B from India. If they do find an employer who wants to sponsor them under EB2 or EB3 category, right now for Indian-born nationals, they're estimating that wait time to be over 134 years. 134 years, okay, before they get a green card.
That's too much.
Yes, yeah. And these are statistics that we're
Shocking,
quoting.
yeah.
And obviously the ones who always suffer are the ones, the country of nationalities or country of birth, where we are most backlogged, for example, China, India, Mexico, for example. And so these are continuous violations that I continue to see when it comes to migrants from India, for example. And if they continue this trend, the losers will be the American economy and the American people. So
isn't it too late for them to realize? I mean, what can they do? They can't do anything at the moment, right?
They can't. Even the process that we had before Prachi was unreasonable. I have a guy from, I have a foreign national from Nigeria who's here as a student, and he was applying for a financial analyst job in Texas. And he did the right thing where he graduated. He didn't have, he didn't get selected for H-1B. So he went back to his home country and was waiting for the employer to finish the entire certification and immigrant visa process. We're waiting 3 years. I think it's ridiculous that the immigration system is made up as such that it takes 3 to 4 years to sponsor someone who is fully capable of doing this job. Mind you, before that, we had to go through heaps and hurdles to show who was not applying or why people were not applying locally. So, and this is kind of a common misconception. You don't just hand out jobs to foreign nationals, including any students that come here. Every employer has to show through, vetting process, through recruitment ads and all these ad placements that are done as required by the government. You have to show that you were trying to give this job to a US citizen, but no one applied. Or even if someone applied, they did not meet the qualifications due to reasons A, B, and C. So we already have all of these, processes in place. But the fact that it takes this long, and then to add insult to injury, you're blaming foreign nationals and you're blaming these citizens for taking our spots or our jobs. The reality is we don't have people to fill in the gap. And we're going to continue to see that we are just headed the wrong direction.
The US is the number one option for any Indian student. In 2024, around 86,000 Indian students enrolled in US colleges. The US is known for the world's best colleges and providing an enriching environment for research. Riding on the America First policy, Trump in the past few months has taken bold steps to discourage immigration. One may say that it is to protect one's country and its people, but many disagree. In a porous world which does not recognize boundaries, such restrictions are not going down too well. This too at a time when diversity is something to be proud of and not cringe upon. Anti-immigration policies and now the Howard incident has somewhat marred the confidence of Indian students to join colleges in the US. In case such anti-immigration sentiments linger on for long, Indian student traffic is sure to get diverted to other somewhat friendlier nations. This episode was produced by Rajas Nayak, sound designed by Indranil Bhattacharjee, executive producers Anirban Chaudhary and Arijit Burman. Thank you for listening, and if you like this episode, do spread the word. All new episodes of the Morning Brief podcast drop every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. It streams on Amazon Prime, JioSaavn, Spotify, Apple, and of course, ET's own audio platform, ET Play. Have a great week ahead. All clips used in this episode belong to their respective owners. Credits mentioned in the description.